Welcome to the City of Bakersfield Planning Commission meeting. This television broadcast is brought to you by the local cable companies, the County of Kern, and the City of Bakersfield. You can watch the rebroadcast of this meeting Saturday at 7 p.m. and Sunday at 10 a.m. You can download the agenda for this meeting at www.bakersfieldcity.us. Presiding over this evening's meeting, Chair Daniel Cater.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to call to order the May 16th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Cater.
Here.
Commissioner Bowers.
Here.
Commissioner Bell.
Here.
Commissioner Wade.
Here.
Commissioner Coleman.
Here.
Commissioner Lomas. Commissioner Rudnick.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for attending tonight's Planning Commission meeting. This commission provides an opportunity for public participation in the development process throughout the City of Bakersfield. The Planning Commission considers a wide variety of projects, including subdivision maps, zone changes, general plan amendments, and much more. When applications are received, the City Planning Division analyzes the request. Planning staff will present the facts about the project along with their recommendation to the Commission, who will approve the item or make a recommendation as appropriate. Our goal is to carefully consider each project and make a decision that will balance individual rights with public welfare and the general well-being of our community. We will now receive public statements. This is a time reserved for anyone wishing to speak or address the Commission on a matter not on the public hearing portion of the agenda. Please note, if you are here for items 5A through 5E, this is not the time to speak. Does anyone in the audience wish to address the Commission? If so, please come forward and state your name.
Good evening. My name is Elliot Kirschman, Honorable Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. I had the pleasure of attending the start of an organization that's going to work on downtown called The Hub this week. And Commissioner Cater, Chairman Cater, is, I understand, a board member of the Bakersfield Hub. And while I'm not affiliated with that organization, I would like to commend them on some interesting ideas that I noticed while going to the sort of, I guess, ribbon cutting, if you want, or the start of this new organization. You'll probably notice they're going to be putting pianos around the downtown area and have folks come and play them. I think that's really awesome. Probably you're going to talk about this later, but I was going to steal it a little bit. But anyways, I think my comment tonight would be, I think that's a fantastic idea. I'd also like to encourage the Planning Commission to do something that other Planning Commission around the state have done historically, and that is work to develop a downtown-specific plan. Downtown-specific plans have been used by municipalities over the decades to, come up with constructive ideas on how to better, specifically downtown. The forum on the actual of what's important about the specific plans is they have very specific guidelines for development in this case downtown, but that then those guidelines get incorporated, they get added to the city's municipal code, so that when a developer of a downtown property, in this case, comes to redevelop his parcel, there is a roadmap. There is a publicly approved and vetted roadmap in order to make a harmonious development in that particular area. For example, some downtowns like there are some downtowns in LA that have planted trees. Those trees have been maintained by the city. There's been specific plans that dictate what old buildings look like or harmonious development. Anyways, I encourage the Planning Commission to look at options on working through a downtown-specific plan for Bakersfield, using folks like the Hub, the Downtown Business Owners Association, and other groups, interest groups, to really put, this is important, the code behind the improvements and the vision. And I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Elliot Kirschman. Are there any other public statements? Okay, seeing none, no additional statements. We will now move on to the consent calendar non-public hearing items. These agendas typically involve housekeeping or administrative matters that do not require a public hearing. Does any commissioner wish to remove a consent calendar non-public hearing item for separate consideration? If not, may I have a motion to adopt staff's recommendation on the consent calendar non-public hearing items of the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve item 4A, the approval of minutes from the regular planning commission meeting of May 2nd, 2019.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Wade. Commissioners, please cast your vote. Few moments of the tension rises in the room. Yeah. I think this might be more than tension. I think this might be a. Did everyone press confirm, please? Me too. Double click. Oh, hello.
Oh, there we go. It worked.
All right. I would ask members of the audience, this is our third session using a new voting method, and please bear with us. Okay. Looks like we can move on to item 5. Consent calendar public hearing items. The next agenda section includes public hearing items that are considered routine or non-controversial. These items have been reviewed by staff and are conditioned in accordance with the requirements of the municipal code. The planning director will read each of the items on the consent calendar to ensure that the public has an understanding of all items to be considered. If you wish to speak on an item, please come forward after the items are read and ask that the item be removed for discussion. If no items are removed by a member of the public or a commissioner, the commission will vote on all items together in one motion without further comment. Mr. Coyle, will you please read agenda items 5A through 5E?
Yes, good evening, Chair Cater. If I could just advance the slides here. We have 5 projects on your agenda for this evening. Project 5A is an extension of time for vesting tentative tract map 6892, which is a proposal to approve 3 more years to develop this project, which consists of 130 single-family residential lots, a canal lot, and a drill site lot on 32.63 acres located south of Red Bank Road, approximately a quarter mile east of South Fairfax Road. Project 5B is an extension of time for vesting tentative tract map 6902, which is a proposal to approve 3 more years to develop this project, which consists of 61 single-family residential lots on 17.77 acres, located on the northeast corner of East Wilson Road and South Fairfax Road. Project 5C is an extension of time for vesting tentative tract map 6939, which is a proposal to approve 3 more years to develop this project, which consists of 172 single-family residential lots on 40 acres located on the southeast corner of Red Bank Road and South Fairfax Road. Project 5D is zone change number 19-0021, which is a proposed zone change from a planned commercial development to a revised planned commercial development zone on 1.95 acres of a larger 16.75 acre commercial center generally located at 5601 California Avenue. The change would replace a restaurant building with 2 buildings for multiple tenant retail and restaurant uses. And finally, Project 5E is a street renaming. It's a proposal to rename Cottonwood Road to South Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard between East Brundage Lane to Casa Loma Drive. This concludes my reading of this evening's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle. At this time, I will open all consent calendar public hearing items. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on a consent calendar public hearing item? Again, this is not the time to take testimony. Just request that the item be moved to the public hearing portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Chair Cater. I request that item 5D as in dog, zone change number 19-0021 be removed from the consent calendar public hearing items.
Thank you. Can I get your name again?
Elliot Kirschman.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to move a consent calendar public hearing item 5A through 5E to the public hearing portion of the agenda? Does any commissioner wish to remove a consent calendar public hearing item for further discussion? Commissioners? Nope. All right. All right. Seeing no other items being moved, at this time, the public hearing on consent calendar items 5A, B, C, and E are now closed. May I get a motion to adopt staff's recommendation on consent calendar public hearing items 5A, 5B, 5C, and 5E?
I make a motion to approve 5A, B, C, and E as a consent item.
May I get a second?
I'll second that motion.
Commissioner Bowers. Commissioners, please cast your votes. Technology, please work.
Motion passes.
Thank you. It is now time to hear the consent calendar public hearing item 5D removed from that portion of the agenda. Before we begin, I'd like to explain how the hearing will be conducted. Staff will first give a more in-depth report, then those in favor of the project will be allowed to speak. Those in opposition of the project will be able to speak after all those in favor have spoken. Each side will then be given 5 minutes to provide rebuttal comments. Individual speakers may ask questions during their statements, but the questions will not be answered until the public hearing on that item is closed. Written comments may be given to the clerk, who will provide copies to the commission. Please be respectful of others participating in the hearing by not repeating the remarks of previous speakers and presenting any comments in a clear and concise way. Mr. Coyle, would you please provide us your staff report on item 5D?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Agenda item 5D, zone change 19-0038. McKentley Malik Architects, Inc. are representing Dollinger Properties. The project is situated on 1.95 acres of a larger 16.75 acre site developed with a mixed-use shopping center generally located at the northeast corner of Stockdale Highway and California Avenue. The project is a request for a zone change from planned commercial development zone to planned commercial development zone to accommodate the demolition of an existing restaurant and development of two multi-tenant retail restaurant buildings totaling approximately 15,000 square feet. When the planned commercial development zone is used as a combining district within a commercial zone, the site plans are reviewed by your commission as a plan development review. However, when the planned commercial development zone is assigned as an exclusive zone, the site development plan as approved shall become a part of the zoning ordinance of the city and thereby approved by City Council as a zone change. With the planned commercial development zone, the applicant shall commence construction no later than 3 years from the effective date of the zone change. If construction has not been commenced within that time, your commission can consider whether changed circumstances justify a zone change to rescind the planned commercial development zone, or if additional time is necessary to be conditioned in order to commence construction of the project. The project has been designed in compliance with requirements of city standards and policies to include design standards for large retail developments, and no deviations from zoning ordinance standards have been requested. Some interior landscaping will be removed to accommodate the new buildings, and additional interior landscaping will be installed as part of the parking lot reconfiguration. Regarding landscaping, the staff report prepared for today's meeting stated that landscape trees along California Avenue and Business Center Drive will remain as is. However, the applicant is proposing to remove the turf and replace it with ground cover. After reviewing street landscape areas along the California Avenue and Business Center Drive corridors, it was concluded the existing turf should remain for consistency. A memorandum was prepared recommending the revision to condition B6 to state that, quote, "No mature landscaping or existing turf shall be removed without a prior approval by the planning director," end quote. Staff recommends your commission adopt the resolution and suggested findings approving the zone change from planned commercial development zone to planned commercial development zone on 16.75 acres, incorporating the Planning Department's memorandum dated May 16, 2019, and recommend the same to City Council. This concludes our staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle. The public hearing on this item is open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Good evening, Chair Cater and Commissioners. My name is Ken McKinley. I'm with McKinley Millack Architects. We have our most of our project team here tonight, and hopefully can answer any questions that might come up. I'm not sure exactly what questions there will be. I did want to point out the turf. We will replace it, however, because I think most of it's dead on California currently. But we will maintain it in place if that's the desire. And I also just wanted to stress that we're really only redeveloping that very northwest corner of the project. It's where the restaurant was, and the idea is to put two buildings on the street frontages in that location with hopefully end-cap restaurants with patios. But this does not involve any of the rest of the shopping center at this point. So we're here to answer any questions or respond should you like us to. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the audience wishing to speak in favor of the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed. Seeing no other speakers in favor, I will now ask if anyone wishes to speak in opposition to the project. If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed.
Good evening. My name is Elliot Kirschman, Honorable Chairman and members of the Bakersfield Planning Commission. I appreciate you giving me the time to speak tonight. The history of this site runs pretty deep in Bakersfield. The restaurant there had been there for many, many years, and we've all enjoyed cocktails in the bar and enjoyed the beautiful landscaping that has been around it. I'm very pleased tonight to hear the planning director's memorandum presented to you that the existing landscaping along Stockdale and the abutting street will remain. I'm also very pleased that the applicant has agreed to maintain the turf. I think those are very important things to maintain the integrity of the overall shopping center. Remember, this shopping center was approved in the late to mid 90s is how old it is, and it was approved as a PCD. And remember, PCDs are specific plans on which a developer has the right to develop that particular center. You see PCDs quite often where in today's current standards, the developer must bring landscape plans, they must bring elevations, and that is important because it makes sure that the entire development, in this case 16 acres, which is what the original PCD was developed under, is developed in a harmonious manner. And quite frequently in Bakersfield, developers of this size of shopping centers develop parts as the market dictates. So this center has gone through a few iterations. When it was originally designed, there was no CVS drugstore. That was a gas station that was supposed to be part of the law of the bonds there. So a PCD was amended at the time, and that particular part was approved. And over the years, this commission has seen and approved different site plans. But the point is that the applicant specifically said, tonight we're only dealing with one specific part. I think it's important that even though we are dealing with one specific part, that because this was developed as a shopping center, we must look and make sure that the developer is developing in a way and is maintaining the rest of the center so that it maintains its harmonious balance with the original intent. And that really is the issue that I have tonight. Over the years, this development, not just the development there where the restaurant was, they have not done a very good job maintaining the landscaping within the larger parcel. I'd like to show a picture here real fast. And a few months ago, I brought this picture to your attention, this commission's attention, in dealing with the new landscape ordinance, if I may. I think sometimes these are hard to read, but basically, this was this center as of 2013. This is an aerial photo thanks to Google, and this center was a very nice landscaped center. There were beautiful trees. If you go over here to the subject parcel there were beautiful trees that were part of the restaurant that were maintained. As you move through, there were beautiful trees that were along the side, this part where people, parked. There were beautiful trees along the frontage. And then sometime later, the developer thought it was a great idea to remove the trees. And this really is the crux of my opposition tonight to this project. Believe me, I'm in the development business, and I take care of our centers, and I don't think this particular developer is not necessarily not taking care of his center, but I don't think that he's maintained the center to the standards of our ordinance. Just to remind you, this is what it looked like in 2013 and what it looks like today. The ordinance is very specific. It says that in 15 years, the parking lot should have 40% shade, that the tree should be a mix of 35% evergreen and the rest deciduous. What's interesting is this particular developer, this project here, was actually cited for violation of the municipal code a few years ago. There we go. So this is just you can't really see it, but basically, oh, sorry, there we go. Perfect. Sorry about that. In 2017, this particular developer, Dollinger, who owns a majority of this center, who is also the declarant of the CC&Rs and therefore in control of all the common area, was cited for removing landscaping in his parking lot, specifically the landscaping in front of the Aldi's grocery store. I think Aldi's is a great use, fantastic use. I applaud the developer for landing a great tenant. But unfortunately, the result was the patrons of Bakersfield who park in that parking lot have the sun beating on their heads. The code is very specific. It asks the developers maintain a shade of 40% in 15 years. This center is well over 15 years, and yet the shade is non-existent. So to wrap up my comments tonight, I think it's important. I understand the developer wants to look specifically at the areas that he's trying to improve. And I think they're great improvements. Changing the use there, I don't have an issue with. What I do have an issue with is because this is a PCD, this is very important. Because this is a PCD, right, we must make sure that it maintains its harmonious balance with the rest of the center. And furthermore, if the developer takes trees out, there's very specific codes that deal with what happens in that case. The code says that if you take a tree out, he has a prerogative, but it must be replaced with at least, because these are large trees, a 48-inch box tree that has a standard 3-inch trunk. The trees he put in there, one more thing, and the trees must go back the way that it was originally approved and designed. The original improvements designed in 2000 or in the early 2000 or the late 1990s had a very different tree palette than what the developer installed as a response to the city's code enforcement violation. He installed all the exact same type of trees. They're actually pear trees. They're flowering pear trees. They're all deciduous, which means they will all lose their leaves, in the fall. And further, he did not mix them correctly according to the landscape standard. He did not put at least 35% evergreen trees. So I asked the Planning Commission tonight to condition, even though it's maybe a small part, it is an important part, condition his expansion of his shopping center with making sure the rest of his shopping center is put back to the way it was back in 2013, where we had beautiful trees where folks could park under and enjoy the shade. And, I think that would be appropriate in this case. I don't think it'd be onerous. He spent a few $1 million on the building. He's going to spend a few $1 million more. And I think it's important that the folks in Bakersfield have a landscaping that gives us some respite from the sun, to be honest with you. The code is there to make sure that's what happens. And I asked the Planning Commission to give the public their shade back. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in opposition to the project? If so, please step to the microphone, identify yourself, and proceed. Seeing no other speakers in opposition, before we move to the rebuttal period, I would like to give the commissioners an opportunity to ask questions of the public or city staff. Please remember this is not the time to express any opinions on the matter, only to ask questions. Are there any commissioners wishing to speak? Commissioner Coleman? Sure. Okay.
This is directed at staff. The applicant was very clear to say that he's only talking about this one section here. Is it within our authority to require the landscape improvements that Mr. Kirchman has asked for?
So typically speaking, the landscape ordinance only applies for projects that go through site plan review. But since this is a PCD, it's a little different. We've run into this before. You guys have a little more latitude on what you can condition. But I would tell you right now, as the city, since 2017, we've been dealing with trying to get them back to the original PCD through code enforcement means. And it's a struggle because the hammer is really hard on some of these to find. We don't have an easy tool to just make them plant a bunch of big trees. So you condition it that way, enforcement will remain the same problem that we've had since 2017. And we're trying still to get it back to what it was before they cut them all down. So I don't know that we technically need a condition just to make it how it was, because that's what we're trying to do. But like I said, since it is a PCD, you have a little more latitude.
So what you're saying is that we could make that a condition of this approval? Do we have the authority to make it the condition to bring it to the current landscape standard?
The whole site? That would be difficult because the frontage was built before and they're not constructing anything. I think replanting parking lot trees is one thing, but I don't know that I'd be comfortable making them add 5 feet of right-of-way to the southern end or whatever they would need to do to make it comply with the current landscape ordinance. It's a little above and beyond, it's kind of like I said, just replanting parking lot trees.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Agar, I have a follow-up. If you could just expound a little bit, the 2017 incident of being cited for removal of trees, your response to me was a little bit vague as far as what actions were taken, what actions are concluded, what actions are still outstanding as far as resolving the issue.
So code enforcement issued the correction notice, letting them know that that was a violation, and then building and planning staff worked to see what trees can get planted. They requested a certain number of trees, and all these, according to staff, never provided an accurate count of what trees were there. Staff also requested that evergreen trees be planted, and as Mr. Kirschman said, that was not done. So staff is researching where the code enforcement case left off, if it's still open. And if it's not open, it could be something that we could reopen to try to get them to fix.
Okay, so it very much still is in progress?
Yeah, and like I said, with these landscaping issues, enforcement is difficult. The city can't just, we can't just arrest somebody for not planting trees. And similarly, we can't go in and plant a bunch of trees on their property. So it's a difficult thing for us to fix. We try to gain compliance by cooperation rather than strong arming or filing a lawsuit. So that's what we've still been working towards. I get that it's taken a long time, but staff is limited, and it's kind of how things work.
Understood. So at the time, the 2017, because I believe our current landscape standards, there's a penalty associated with non-compliance as well to create more of an enforcement arm? Is that,
Yes.
was that present as 2017 as well?
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And that answers questions, and this is not the time to provide comments, so. So are there any other commissioner comment or questions before we move into the rebuttal period? Okay, then with that, I will just give a little intro to this next portion of our hearing. We will now provide 5 minutes to provide rebuttal comments. How the period works is it is a 5-minute total time for each side. So we will begin, since we began with those in favor providing comments, we will start the rebuttal with those in favor. Again, this is a 5-minute total time for all speakers. So if you wish to speak on the item, I recommend coming to the front so that we can be efficient and allow as many speakers to provide comment. And please, now more than ever, be respectful of others, be succinct, and please respect other speakers by not providing duplicate comments to what has previously been stated. Thank you. We will now start the 5 minutes for those in favor. Thank you.
Commissioners, again, Ken McKinley. I don't want to presume anything because I think what we're specifically talking about is the parking field of trees in front of the Aldi supermarket, which predates my involvement in the project. However, the owner did bring us in when the issue came up as an issue. And the landscape architect that was involved in trying to help work through that process is here with me tonight, Michael Schuler, and he could probably respond to how or where that left off as far as we're concerned. But again, I know it's part of the overall shopping center. I understand the PCD, latitude here, but I just want to make sure that we, if at all possible, we don't tie the two together, because we're trying to move forward with something that I think everybody will be very happy with on the northwest corner. but we do want to resolve what's going on in front of the Aldi space. So, Michael, maybe you can just explain a little bit what the history was after we found out about the issue.
Good evening. My name is Michael Schuler. I'm with MSLA Landscape Architecture. I was contacted by the developer, or by the owner, after the trees had been removed. So like Ken, I kind of came in after the fact. What we had done is we had researched the site, researched the code. We knew that we had to address the removal and the replacement of these trees. And essentially what we had done is we had come in, we did an analysis of the site, we did some calculations based on what needed to be put back as far as evergreens, deciduous trees, shade trees, and we actually did prepare a plan. We submitted a plan to planning. We received comments from planning. We had addressed the plan based on the comments that we did receive, and about, I want to say it was maybe May of last year, we had resubmitted a final plan, and we never received a response. So I had followed up a couple times with planning department via phone calls, via emails, and still have not received comments or any response. Essentially, we do believe that we had addressed the comments, and we do believe that we have a plan that is ready to be approved for installation. And we're just waiting back for feedback and a response from planning on whether or not the plan is approved.
Thank you for,
Okay.
I want to be respectful of your 5 minutes, so
Oh,
we'll-
no.
we'll address, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, yes. Is there any other?
My name is Bob Haas, and I'm with Cypress Retail Group, and we're in charge of the marketing on this new project here. And I can tell you, having represented Dollinger Properties on the Aldi deal, landscaping and construction are not the areas that I'm really involved in. And quite frankly, I don't really know what transpired or who actually removed the trees. I do know that the tenant had concerns, the tenant being Aldi, that trees were somehow blocking the visibility to their store. I'm sure you've heard these things before. And somehow, some way, the trees came down. I do know as well that whether the right trees were planted or not, there was an effort to get trees back into the boxes, which were existing 3x3 or so boxes in the parking field for whatever trees were there before, which I'm not aware of. But the point, I guess, is though the property was purchased by Dollinger Properties when it was a sports chalet, and it was a fresh and easy market, I believe, before Aldi. And those tree boxes and those trees were purchased as they are today, as I understand it, at least the physical area where the trees are. So just wanted to point that out. Again, too, I'll go so far as to say I'm sorry that that's all transpired. I can assure you that as it relates to this new project, that we will move forward in a manner that you're happy with and that the community is happy with. We want to see an outstanding project. Done a number of things here in the city of Bakersfield. We like the city very much. We feel it's an outstanding place to do business, and we're certainly here to keep the residents and the city happy with whatever it is we do on this new project. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. With 20 seconds remaining, are there any other comments in rebuttal in favor of the project? Seeing no other speakers, we will close the in favor rebuttal and move to a 5-minute rebuttal period for those in opposition, giving those in opposition an opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Chair Cater. Member Elliot Kirshenman. I appreciate the applicant's sentiment. I really do. I do happen to have the complete record of the code enforcement proceedings, which I'd be happy to present to the commission. My time is burning here, so I better hurry up. So at last of my research, the original case was actually closed by Mr. Paul Johnson, who's a principal planner at the city of Bakersfield. I spoke to Mr. Johnson on this case, and he basically said, we're working with the applicant. I know the trees weren't planted to spec, they weren't sized correctly, but I pretty much ran out of everything I can do. Unfortunately for me, that's not good enough. For this community, I don't think that's good enough. The applicant, stated that, hey, we bought this property. They got taken out some way, somehow, in the middle of the night, in the dark. That's great, but I got to park underneath the trees. This community had a hearing where the community, through the Planning Commission, said this is what we want the trees to look like. This is what we want our shopping center to end up looking like. And I don't think it's good enough that we don't get that in time. The landscape architect said they have a plan that's ready to go. They said that it's been looked at by the planning department. I say great. If that's truly the case, let's do two things. Let's make sure that landscape plan is consistent with the original PCD. Okay, I showed a picture tonight of the before and after, the 2013 versus the 2019. And I guarantee you that a lot of the trees that were even put in as of the result of the case were not replaced to the original standards. I'd ask the Planning Commission to make sure they get put back to the original standards. So two things. I'd like to see the Commission condition this project to have the 16 acres looked at in compliance with the original PCD plan. And I'd like to have a condition on this project be to replace the landscaping to its original intent and with the sizes that are specified in the code when you do remove a tree. And the minimum box size is 48 inch. It's a big tree. It's a 3-inch trunk. What that does is it means it's got a jump start on life. And that tree can get back to its original height and shading as fast as possible. Now, I got 2 minutes left, and the applicant said, well, we just bought this property. Well, one specific important piece of this, and they might say they can't do anything about it, but Dollinger Properties is the declarant of the shopping center, which means they are in control of the CC&Rs. Okay? The CC&R declarant means that they have control over the common area. As I understand, they're the majority landowner there and maintain and manage the property. They may have property managers that do the work for them, but ultimately, as the declarant, they can make changes to the common area. I'm sure there's some lease language about trees and whatnot, but that was an agreement between Dollinger and the tenants, not the agreement between Dollinger, now as the property owner, and the community. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. The Planning Commission's responsible for the relationship between the developer and the community. Just like many other PCDs that you condition with trees and landscaping and elevations, that's an agreement between the community that has the ability to come to the public hearing and that developer in specific. So I'd ask you tonight to make sure the relationship between the community and the developer in respects to the original intent of the PCD is met. Condition this project to go back to its original condition, and condition that the trees that are replaced meet the landscape standards and also meet the 48-inch box requirements. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to speak in our last 40 seconds of rebuttal for those against? He did. Commissioner Coleman? Yes. All right. Seeing no other speakers, I will close the rebuttal period for those in opposition. And a quick procedural question for Mr. Iger. I think a lot was revealed in the rebuttal period. So if we have questions for staff or for the public, do you want them to happen now before the public hearing?
You can do it either way. You can close and ask questions, or you could ask questions now, up to the chair.
Okay. I think I'm going to give an opportunity for commissioners to ask questions before we close the public hearing, just because there was a lot. Are there any other commissioner questions? Commissioner Bell.
So staff, back to this point of how we're able to affect the acreage as it was and what it was originally. Can you be a little more specific on what we as commissioners can hold them accountable to? It is a PCD. Mr. Kirschman has asked for 48-inch box trees. My understanding is that was not what the old ordinance would have been, but however, that is the maturity of the trees that were taken out. Can you give me some clarification on our latitude, please?
So since it's in front of you tonight, you can really condition it if you choose however you want. It doesn't, because the PCDs are where you're going kind of a unique standard. It doesn't have to meet the code standard. It can be above or different. It doesn't have to be exactly what it was. It doesn't have to be, like I said, the new landscape standard. Because the new one that we adopted in 2018 does require 48-inch box tree. But as you stated, this occurred before that ordinance was adopted. So it's one of these, it's a kind of a long-term problem. And if they in fact did submit plans to planning, I already sent an email to the staff that would be involved to see kind of what the deal, what the hang-up is with that. So we can try to rectify it on the code enforcement end rather than new conditions. But at the end of the day, it's up to the commission to choose.
Thank you. Next, we have Commissioner Wade.
This question's directed towards staff. Mr. Schuler stated that the correspondence from the developer went unanswered for now quite a while. Do we have any information about that?
No, and like I said, I emailed the person that was corresponding with them to see what the deal was, but I don't have any personal knowledge right now. I don't think anyone here can answer that.
Okay. Mr. Schuler, you mind if I ask you a question? Yeah. Do you know, is it the developer's intention to put these trees in?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Oh.
Thank you. I just have two quick questions, one for staff and then one for either the staff or the applicant. The first for staff, do we have language of what, the time of the incident, the time the trees were removed, what the current, how the landscape code read at that point, whether it was replacement in kind, whether it was replacement in kind 36-inch box, or?
I don't have it in front of me. I can do some research, and if we want to go back to it, we can add language that would be the old landscape standard if you want. I just have to go back and do some research.
Okay. And then, this is kind of a shooting out into space, but does anybody have access to the landscape plan that is in between somebody's desk and the applicant? Does the applicant have access to it in a way that could be shared with the commission, and I know staff, it sounds like, cannot locate it? It would be helpful to know what is actually on the table. And then while you're scrolling, it looks like, one other question. The flowering pear trees that were replanted, what year were they planted in?
This all occurred between 17 and 18. I don't know which ones were planted 17 and 18, maybe the...
Does the applicant know how long they've been in the ground?
I'm not exactly sure when they were planted, but I want to say that they were early last year.
Okay.
End of 17, early 18. I want to say it was about the time period.
Okay. And then I'm just curious, and this can, again, question, they were planted as 24-inch box, is that?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And what is the growth period between a 24-inch and a 48-inch box? How many?
Growth period, the timing?
Yeah, like how much older is a 48-inch tree than a 24-inch?
They're usually one season per step up in box. So you would go 24-inch, next season would be a 36-inch, next season would be a 48-inch.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other commissioner questions before we move to commissioner comments? I actually did have one more question since we're getting all the questions out. The Mexicali parcel, it's not called the Mexicali parcel. The parcel under consideration for tonight for the addition of the additional buildings. Do we, as a city, have a standard to maintain existing landscape during the construction process to ensure, the vitality of the matured landscaping that exists along Business Park Drive and California Avenue?
Yes, it kind of goes back to what they were cited for removing the other trees. The existing landscaping needs to be protected for any reason, whether it's during construction or not.
So does it get as specific as, watering schedules and maintenance? So.
I don't think we get that specific. I can double check, but I don't believe it's as specific as water scheduling.
All right, I will now close the public hearing and move to commissioner comments and action. Are there any commissioner comments? The switchboard is lighting up. Commissioner Coleman.
Thank you. So, recently we changed the municipal code, the landscaping portion of the municipal code, to basically improve what we were asking the developers to do. And there were a couple of sites that were specifically referred to during our discussion about that, and this parcel is one of them. I think that in general, we were offended by the hacking down of all the trees in the parking lot. And I felt like it was more than just in front of Aldi. It was the entire parcel of land there. They chopped all the trees down. And the developer was not proactive in helping us resolve that in 2017 and 2018. So for me, I would prefer to see you talked about not having it tie in. I would like to see it tied in, and I would be comfortable with it being, whatever the size is. I like the comment about making it consistent with the original PCD plan. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Bell.
So a couple things. It is difficult. We typically on a project like this, we want to be sensitive to the developer. We want to do what's right by the community. We want to see both sides of this issue resolved. I think I certainly trust our staff and trust them to do what's well or right by the code compliance issues. And one of the items I would consider, certainly, I'm in favor of your project. I think your project's a good project. But I'd like to see us get to an end on this compliance issue and not give them occupancy, not give them use until all compliance is satisfied by our code compliance and by our planning department. So I'm in agreement. I think another year this thing would be developed. You'd be 2-year-old trees, 3-year-old trees. If they put in 24-inch box trees, if that can be confirmed, you get 2 more years, and it sounds like we're really close. So let's get both these things figured out at the same time. My vote would be positive as long as I knew that we were going to meet the obligation as a city and to the code compliance issues that are unresolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bell. Commissioner Wade.
I'm the libertarian commissioner that's usually fighting on behalf of property rights and against us encumbering the property owner. In this case, I think there's a reasonable compromise to be made. If the developer is in fact committed to replacing these trees, and if there has been some issue with communication with the city, which I don't doubt, if that's the developer's intention to begin with, let's just have them both happen at the same time. Take care of both things. I understand that the less encumbrance, the better for you guys, but you have to understand the perspective of the city, and it was kind of a black eye. Until recently, Stockdale in California was the highest volume traffic intersection in the city of Bakersfield. And we have all the trees chopped down in front of one of the buildings for better visibility. So I think it's a reasonable compromise to tie these two together. I think the better question is, what do we want with that? And I think asking things to come up to current standards is too strict. But in terms of looking at what would be reasonable to be placed in there, had the trees that were recently planted had been allowed to grow, I think that's what we should be talking about. But Commissioner Coleman, in general, I'm of the same light as you in terms of thinking on this.
Thank you, Commissioner Wade. Are there any other commissioner comments before? All right, if not, I will just say a few words. I would say generally with regards to the trees in the adjacent parcel, part of the larger PCD, I am in agreement that I think the issue should be resolved, and it should, if we have an arm here to put it to rest, we should put it to rest. I would like to see in the conditions, you know, given the time, given the ambiguity of the process, we do have trees that were planted now that, in theory, should be approaching that 48-inch box size. So I think putting a condition of documented equivalency of the trees that are there now, because I think ripping out trees that are the size of a 48-inch box to put back a 48-inch box seems counterintuitive. So I think, you know, I'd like to put a condition to document compliance if the trees that have now grown to an age that they would be consistent with a 48-inch box. I think that would provide, you know, we don't need to rip out a tree if it's now at the established size of what our code documents. And then back to my thoughts on the, I've seen a lot of landscape in this town that is on a site plan documented as existing to remain, and then the project starts construction gets delayed, the water gets shut off, the trees die. Once you have a dead tree, it's a lot easier to remove it than a live tree. And so if possible, I'd like to see a condition added that the irrigation to the existing trees along Business Center Drive and California Avenue will be remaining in use during the duration of construction to make sure that, I mean, the Business Center Drive trees really are dramatic and I think really do add value to the parcel. And so I think giving them the best chance to survive during construction, I think is the right way of, you know, lessons learned from the previous parcel, but then also kind of best practices moving forward. And then lastly, I had the opportunity to meet with the applicant a few weeks ago, and one item we discussed at the PCD was the lack of a pedestrian connectivity to Business Center Drive. There is a site walk that kind of skirts Building 2 on the east side, and then terminates kind of in the back service core of the building. And, you know, I think as we look through these processes, one of the stated goals of the PCD zoning is to provide a walkable experience and provide access points beyond vehicular traffic. And so I would also would ask if we could put a pedestrian connection to Business Center Drive via any of the sidewalks that we have kind of skirting the building, Building 2. And then one more thing that I'm thinking through is, and this is again, the language of the landscape ordinance, if we have the language of the previous ordinance. I think Mr. Kirschman brought up the combination of deciduous and evergreen trees as a city standard. And I would like to put consideration that if we are conditioning that this issue be resolved, if we allow the applicant to look at the balance of new trees being added holistically to the site to get that percentage of evergreens versus deciduous, so that the trees that are already there that are doing well can, if they are compliant with the code, can remain. That was a little wordy. Did that, Mr. Egger, are you
I'm trying to,
dreaming about how to make a motion out
yeah,
of
I'm
that?
trying to get the wording right for this motion. I was going to wait till all the comments and I could help you guys craft something when you're ready.
Helping us craft something would be very helpful, I believe. Yes. All right. Are there any other commissioner comments? Seeing none. Mr. Iger, if you could craft away.
So with regards to the parking lot landscaping, my recommended motion would be that the city would not issue a certificate of occupancy until the parking lot trees that were removed are replaced consistent with the original PCD of a 48-inch box size. Any existing trees do not need to be removed to bring up to 48-inch box size, and that the type of trees will be evaluated with city staff and the developer to meet the standard.
I thought we said that that the 48-inch box tree only became effective in the 2018 plan. We're asking them to put it back to the way it was in the original PCD plan.
So I was able to check it. Before that, it actually was still 48-inch box tree. That was one of the things that was not changed. So.
And I guess the language I would say is, I think to prove equivalency to a 48-inch box for existing.
Okay.
Yeah, because if the trees haven't grown and they're still. Yeah, and then can we add maintenance language and then,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
So we have the tape to make sure we get all these conditions right. So. 'Cause I had a couple other conditions that you had was the add pedestrian access to Business Center Drive
Yes.
from, was it Building 2?
Any
of the
of the
buildings.
site walks adjacent to Building 2, I believe there's a few.
And then the other one is to maintain the watering schedule throughout the period of construction so as not to lose any existing trees or grass.
Mostly trees, I mean. Should I make the All right. I think that sounds great. Is there any other comments before we make the motion? All right, can I have a motion to adopt
right.
staff's recommendation?
I will make a motion to approve this project as stated by staff and the, under the conditions that we've discussed.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Coleman, a second. Commissioners, please cast your vote.
Motion passes.
All right. All right. Moving on to item 7, communications.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to announce that the Planning Commission will meet again on June 6th for the GPA cycle of the agenda. Thank you.
Don't make evening plans. Yeah. Great. Moving on to commissioner comments. Are there any commissioner comments? All right. I just have one quick comment. I would like to thank the public statements tonight. I, in earnest of the agenda, did not address them, and I would just like to say, if city staff could reach out to Mr. Kirschman and explain where we are with our specific plan for downtown, or if there are any stated.
Well, we just released an RFP last Friday for consultant services to begin the general plan update. And it would seem that a downtown specific plan could be folded into that general plan update process. We already have the, I believe it's the Making Downtown Bakersfield Vision Plan that was sort of centered on this notion of a high-speed rail station, but the document kind of stands on its own whether or not a high-speed rail station is ever built. In fact, some of the recommendations in that vision plan are already being implemented. Parking is one that comes to mind, but that there are other steps that we can take with that downtown vision plan and incorporate that in our general plan update as well.
Great. I mean, my understanding is the vision plan is kind of the first step, but a specific plan sort of moves beyond that. And so I think if staff is agreeable, I think that could be maybe a future workshop, just to hear the state of what's being done with the visioning document, and are there any specific plan, is there any specific plan directions being planned at this time?
So noted.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yeah, I had one more thing, because I see some people in the audience that appear to maybe be looking to see what happened to item 5E, which was the renaming of Connery Road. And that was already approved during the consent calendar part of this meeting. So nobody asked to pull it off the agenda for public discussion, so it was automatically approved in the consent calendar. So that item was approved, yes, okay,
Oliver?
great.
Yes. Thank you. Commissioner Bell, is that yours as well? Okay. All right. I have, yes. Congratulations. Yep. All right, seeing no other commissioner comments, I adjourn the meeting at 6:34. Thank you.